Happy New Year, sports fans, and welcome to Sports Crunch with DKROM. We've been on a hiatus recently, but not anymore. It's a new year, and one of my resolutions was to have more episodes on a monthly, if not weekly basis here on Sports Crunch with DKROM, and we are starting at one of the most exciting times on the sports calendar. The NFL playoff season is finally here, and to break down the matchups for this wildcard weekend and all the other teams in the hunt for Super Bowl 50, we have my good friend, longtime guest of the show, the host of the CS podcast, Mr. Chris Shanafelt. How you doing, Chris? Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year, David. I am doing great, and I'm really excited to be back on the show. And here we are. I mean, the NFL regular season went by like that, and here we go with the playoffs.
Tell me about it. Like, these past several years, the NFL regular season always seems to go by in a blink, doesn't it? It's every year.
Yeah, every single year. I mean, sure, there's only 17 weeks, 16 games, but man, I mean, the 3 months that the season is, it really does go by probably faster than any other 3 months of the year.
Sure does. It sure does, and it seems to get faster every year. And now, since we have about an hour's time left, we got to get down to business here, starting with the topic that is probably front and center in the football universe on the minds of every fan, regardless of what team you root for. I call it the quarterback controversy of the century brewing in Denver, Colorado. Yes, Virginia, the Denver Broncos, yes, them, not the New England Patriots, are the #1 seed in the AFC, and it was thanks to the Patriots stumbling in Miami on Sunday, and the Broncos. They were struggling with the San Diego Charger team that's been decimated by injuries this year, and Brock Osweiler and company could have put that game away early, but 5 turnovers, and arguably 4 of them, not Osweiler's fault, but for some psychological, spiritual reason, is the best way I can explain it. Gary Kubiak decided to put Peyton Manning and his bum foot in the game. And Peyton Manning, yes, he only threw 9 passes, but he got the team in the right plays to get 20 second-half points and take the Broncos to the victory, their 5th straight AFC West championship, and the home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. So it's a pretty simple question, but it's a very complicated answer. Brock Osweiler, like I said, didn't look that bad in that game, but there are some advantages that Peyton Manning can bring you. But this day and age, with knowing Peyton Manning's super limitations right now, there are some advantages Osweiler can give you that Peyton Manning can't. So the simple question is, and there's no simple answer, who should the Denver Broncos start in the divisional playoff game on January 17th? Peyton Manning or Brock Osweiler?
Yeah, there is no simple answer, and honestly, I'm not exactly sure if there's a right answer. To me, I would probably go with Peyton Manning. I mean, obviously, we all know what he's been able to do throughout his career. Yeah, he doesn't have the greatest playoff success that you would look for in a Hall of Fame type quarterback, but he's proven that he can win the playoffs. He has a Super Bowl ring, and that was to defeat my Chicago Bears. But he's been there before, and I just think, just looking at this San Diego Chargers-Broncos game this past weekend, the offense, they looked more confident. Things started to roll much better for that team. They ran the ball much better. I'm not exactly sure if that was just a coincidence or if that was, the impact that having Peyton Manning can have out there on an offense. Now, I would say I was surprised. I didn't think that Brock Osweiler deserved to be benched in that game, but what Peyton was able to show, like you said, he only threw 9 passes. I believe he only completed about 5 or 6 of them. Didn't show too much in the passing game, to be completely honest with you, but everything looked like it was starting to roll much better under Peyton Manning under center in terms of the running game with both C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman. Like I said, no right answer. It is a very complicated decision that the Denver Broncos will have to make in terms of starting Brock Osweiler or Peyton Manning. But I just think that, you give Peyton one last try, one last shot in the playoffs. Brock Osweiler could be there for the future if you think he is your future quarterback. And let's just see how things go with Peyton Manning under center this postseason.
Very interesting point. Like you said, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Like it is very complicated. But here's a potential issue that Deion Sanders, I believe, raised on NFL Network on Sunday night. Brock Osweiler is coming out of contract, and Peyton Manning. This is talk about his playoff record all you want. I think most of those losses aren't even mostly his fault. To be frank, but that's a side issue. He said that Osweiler could take Peyton Manning starting that playoff game as an insult, that his agent is not going to accept any offers from the Broncos for a long-term deal. So do you think that is something that Denver's going to have to consider when they sit down to make their decision eventually?
I mean, I suppose anything's possible, but I really don't think so. I can't see that happening. I mean, obviously, Brock Osweiler has been behind Peyton Manning for a few years now. I got to think that he has some type of respect for him, and I got to think that he would respect the decision by the coaching staff to roll with Peyton Manning, whether Brock Osweiler thinks he's the man for the job or not. And I think that in terms of, in the offseason, a new contract, I'll just say this: money talks, and if the Denver Broncos want Brock Osweiler back, I wouldn't expect some huge 4 or 5 year deal worth $100 million contract or anything like that. He hasn't proved anything to earn that at least, or he hasn't proved much to earn that contract at least. But I think that I do see Brock Osweiler being the future of this team. I do see him getting a contract in the offseason, and I don't think this decision, whether he plays in the playoffs, whether he starts in the playoffs, or Peyton Manning does, I don't think it'll really have much of an impact on a future contract deal. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah. Yes, and like I alluded to earlier, yes, Osweiler his play didn't warrant him to be benched, but like I said, it was something that was psychological and spiritual about it. Because if you looked at the Broncos sideline after the C.J. Anderson fumble in the third quarter, which was their 5th turnover of the ball game, they appeared downtrodden. They appeared like they looked out of it spiritually, and they needed that, and as Kubiak alluded to, it's supposed to give sometimes you need that guy who can re-energize you. And when Peyton Manning came out on the field, the crowd, it was one of the loudest you'd arguably hear an NFL crowd scream when he came on the field. And as Akeem Talib and Antonio Smith, those two guys said in their postgame pressers that they felt the energy just returned with a vengeance the moment he stepped on the field. And the moment he stepped on the field, the Broncos kind of had in their minds that, hey, we are going to win this game. How much of a difference do these unquantifiable things of psyche and spirituality matter in these situations and in the NFL playoffs in particular?
Well, honestly, I think in the end, the better team, the best team will come out on top. And but in terms of confidence and energy, I mean, you talked about it just now. I mean, the energy that the team had once Peyton Manning went into the game, I mean, it really did look like a totally different offense. And you seen that the Broncos were able to pull out the victory there in the fourth quarter, and now win the division. And here they get the wild card bye. I mean, I think that it does have an impact on the team, and especially whenever you're able to have your team play with more confidence, because the Broncos looked like they had lost it there in the third quarter after that last turnover. I think it's always a win, a big deal, a win, and I think it could have a big impact on the team. But in the end, I do think the best team will pull out the victory.
Absolutely, that's what it all comes down to. But here's the thing: it's kind of ironic that the running game looked better with Peyton Manning than with Brock Osweiler, because Osweiler is the better quarterback for the Kubiak offense, and because of Peyton Manning's arm limits being more apparent than ever right now, teams weren't respecting that arm strength. They would crowd the box to take the run away and get their receiver spaces to force Peyton Manning to throw deep balls. And that is like, and Peyton Manning at 39 years old with coming off 4 neck surgeries and a body that's breaking down, is him attempting deep balls. That's like the equivalent of Derrick Rose shooting 3-pointers right now, if you know what I mean.
I like it.
Yeah, and so a concern some Broncos fans have is that if Peyton Manning does start, then it's going to be harder to run the ball because the defense will then load the box, take the run away, and force Peyton Manning to beat you through the air, which is what he clearly cannot do anymore. So would you think carefully about that if you were the Broncos? And do you think that is a solid case for starting Osweiler over Manning in the playoffs?
I think it would be. If you do think that Osweiler should be the guy, then yeah, I think right there is a perfect point. I mean, we've seen Peyton Manning, the first 10 weeks, 9-10 weeks of the season, and it just wasn't the Peyton Manning that we're used to. And this goes back to last season. I know a lot of Broncos fans were unsure if he should have returned this season. But yeah, I do think that would be the best. That would probably be the best point if you're wanting Osweiler to start. Again, the offense, it looked like things were rolling much better under Peyton Manning against the Chargers this past Sunday. But then again, you got to think about it. It was the San Diego Chargers, one of the worst teams in the NFL. The worst team in that division, the AFC West. So I guess you kind of got to take that into it as well. I still think, though, my opinion, I think you roll with Peyton Manning. You give the guy the respect that he deserves, and you let him go out there one last time in postseason play and see what he can do. And obviously, if things aren't looking right, like this past Sunday, if Gary Kubiak thinks there does need to be a change, then you do throw Brock Osweiler out there. Admit that you were wrong. Admit that you know what, Peyton. I just don't know if we could win under you right now in this postseason game, in this playoff game. We think Brock Osweiler has the best shot to win. And obviously, as you said, he is the better quarterback under Gary Kubiak's offense. So, again, very difficult decision the Denver Broncos have to make. And let's just say I'm glad I don't need to.
I'm glad I don't either. And you bring up a good point. And I see this happening too. I see them going with both quarterbacks, at least in their division round game, depending on the context of the situation. It wouldn't be a shock to see them go with both and maybe do a round robin at times to kind of, depending on where they're at. And that might not seem like the best idea, but the upside of that is that might keep the defense guessing what
Right.
you're going to do. So I definitely see them rotating quarterbacks as a possibility, but a lot of possibilities open for the Broncos, who have found numerous ways to win this season, and that is a help for them, in my opinion, going into the playoffs, as they can look at multiple avenues to win games in their final attempt, dare I say, to win a Super Bowl with this core of players. And now let's focus on the rest of that AFC playoff picture and go to the 2 wildcard teams who, in my opinion, I wouldn't want to face either of them right now. And one of them is the Broncos' main AFC West rival this year, the Kansas City Chiefs. After starting 1-5, they have reeled off an unprecedented 10 consecutive wins to finish the season 11-5, millimeters short of surpassing Denver for the division, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, no matter who the opponent is, whether it's the Seahawks or the Broncos or any defense, that passing game will always beat you, because Antonio Brown has arguably become this generation's version of, dare I say, Jerry Rice. That guy is unstoppable, and that passing game is borderline impossible to stop. And against either of those teams, I would, based on the Chiefs' hot streak, plus getting Justin Houston back from injury, their best defender, and the Steelers with that that scary as hell passing game. I would be nervous playing either of them right now. But my question is, what team do you think is more dangerous at this moment? The Chiefs or the Steelers?
You know what? That's definitely a tough. That's another tough one. I'm actually gonna go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I really like what they've been able to do. Again, 1-5, and now they are on a 10-game winning streak to finish the season 11-5. I don't think anybody's seen that one coming. Again, under Alex Smith, they're without their best player and Jamal Charles, who tore his ACL early in the season against the Bears. And the backup running backs have really gotten it done there in Kansas City, whether it's Charkandrick West, Spencer Ware. I mean, you name it. They have been getting the job done. Jeremy Maclin has been a great piece to that offense and obviously has helped Alex Smith out greatly. You know, when you talk about the defense, like you mentioned, Justin Houston, getting him back is huge. And as you tweeted out before the show, the Chiefs are getting back their best pass rusher while the Houston Texans are losing their arguably their best offensive lineman. So that is not fair, as you alluded to. So yeah, I'm going to, and of course, when you talk about the Chiefs defense, you cannot leave out rookie cornerback, their first round pick, Marcus Peters, who has been balling out. I believe he is the leader in interceptions this season in the NFL. If not, he does have a crazy amount of interceptions. He's been a ball hawk this season and has been a huge piece for that Kansas City Chiefs defense. Not to take anything away from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you know, their running back situation is a bit shaky. They lost Le'Veon Bell earlier in this season, and just this Sunday they lost D'Angelo Williams to an ankle injury, and we still have to hear what his status will be for this weekend. So nonetheless, their passing game will still be fine. Like you mentioned, Antonio Brown, another crazy season for what was a 5th, 6th round draft pick about 5 years ago or so. He has certainly made the most of his opportunities. A great team in the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I feel more confident in the Kansas City Chiefs to get a victory this weekend against the Houston Texans in the wild card round of the playoffs. Both teams are very dangerous, and like you said, I certainly wouldn't want to see my team play against either of these two teams in the playoffs.
You do make an argument for Kansas City being the team to be feared the most. However, if there was one thing against the Chiefs, I would say this: their 10 wins, yes. They've only won, I believe, 2 or 3 games against playoff teams. And week 1 against the Texans doesn't count. I honestly think Houston isn't that a legit playoff team, given the crappy division they came from and their quarterback situation with they had to play 4 quarterbacks, first team to ever make the playoffs with using 4 quarterbacks in a season. Yes, they beat Pittsburgh at home, but that was with Landry Jones under center, not Ben Roethlisberger, and they beat Denver on the road, but that was in that game Peyton Manning should have played and essentially gave them that game early with 4 interceptions. So that would be the thing I hold against the Chiefs. And the thing I hold against the Steelers, though, to be fair, is that it's not the steel curtain anymore. It's as my friend C. Salami, Denver, a football analyst, radio personality, says, it's the polyester curtain right now. Their secondary stinks. It is arguably the worst secondary in the NFL, and even marginal quarterbacks like Brock Osweiler and Ryan Mallett tore to shreds weeks ago. So that really scares me about Pittsburgh, and that could give A.J. McCarron a window to operate, as we'll discuss later. But like I said, there are arguments to make against both teams, with the Chiefs with their easy schedule these past 10 games and the Steelers with their horrific secondary. So based on the weaknesses of that I just mentioned on each team, what do you think is a stronger case to make us less our expectations a bit for these teams?
Well, I would have to say, to be completely honest with you, yeah, the Chiefs, their schedule hasn't been very impressive, to say the least. But I mean, any time you could start the season 1-5 and turn it around. I don't care who you're playing against. I mean, it's the NFL. It's the best of the best, no matter who you're playing against. Any way you could turn a 1-5 team into a playoff team, let alone win 10 straight, is very impressive to me. So I would have to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that they're, like you mentioned, their defense isn't the Steelers' defense that we're used to. I mean, their secondary is awful, and as I kind of touched on a little bit ago, I mean, can you really count on many of these guys to stay healthy? I mean, Big Ben, has been an injury-rattled season for him. We already touched on Le'Veon Bell, and of course, now we don't even know who their starting running back is going to be this weekend, with D'Angelo Williams possibly being out. So, yeah, I like the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, both teams are teams that are pretty scary, and probably and a couple of the most feared teams to see in the playoffs, probably.
Absolutely. And another key element that I believe you left out of the Chiefs is that, yes, Alex Smith might not be a sexy quarterback, but what makes him efficient for a playoff team that wins based on defense and running the football, he does not turn the ball over. I believe, what's that number again?
5?
Yes, yes. In the current 10-game winning streak, the Kansas City Chiefs have only turned the ball over 7 times. 7 times. And a team that takes care of the football when you put the big boy pads out in playoffs is going to be a tough outing. So I definitely see the Chiefs and the Steelers, if they get by the Bengals this weekend, making some noise as they go forward in the postseason. And now let's divert our attention to another team that will get this week off, the Carolina Panthers. And MVP Cam Newton. Cam Newton, in my opinion, is the unquestionable MVP of this NFL season. But the Panthers have had an amazing season, but yes, despite them having home field advantage and have the best record in the NFL, they are facing some serious questions in the secondary, like Pittsburgh. They lost slot corner Ben Weaker for the season a couple weeks ago to a broken leg, and this past Sunday, Charles Peanut Tillman, who showed that he still had a lot left in the tank this year, went out with yet another season-ending injury, a torn ACL this time. Feel so bad for that guy. And right now, when you look at the Panthers secondary, sans Josh Norman, high-powered passing offenses like the Cardinals and the Seahawks, if they have to play them, are probably salivating right now with the injuries in that secondary. But I just mentioned the Cardinals, who are another team off this weekend. The Cardinals, their passing offense might be licking its chops to throw the ball against that secondary, but Cam Newton would probably feel the same way if he had to play the Cardinals, because they lost Tyrann Mathieu for the season, another heartbreaking injury. Mathieu was playing like the defensive player of the year, for crying out loud, whether lining up at outside corner, slot corner, free safety, or even linebacker or nickel situations. That guy was just all over the field, making play after play after play after play after play. So the Panthers and the Cardinals, the top 2 teams in the NFC, are facing questions when it comes to the secondary. And if either of them have to play like Seattle or anybody, or Carolina having to play Arizona, and that passing offense, there's going to be problems. But who do you think is going to be hurt more? The Panthers without Tillman and Ben Weaker, or the Cardinals without Tyrann Mathieu?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Tyrann Mathieu has the bigger impact. I think the Cardinals will feel that more. But the Carolina Panthers, they, at least the Arizona Cardinals, they have a pretty good defense, a pretty good secondary with guys like Patrick Peterson. They own Buchanan, even though he's really just a linebacker nowadays. And Rashad, I'm a big fan of Rashad Johnson as well. They got Drod Powers, who has had a iffy season, to say the least. But I would actually go with, again, no doubt about it, Tyrann Mathieu is a better player. But I'm going to say the Carolina Panthers, this is going to hit them even harder, missing both Ben Wickery and Peanut Tillman. I just think that, there's lack of depth there. They even had to call in Cortland Finnegan about midway through the season, and I think he's slated to get the start in this first playoff game. Of course, a lot could change since then. Maybe they bring another body in or something like that. I mean, the Redskins just signed Kerry Williams, which I have no idea why, but I mean, that guy's horrible. But anyways, yeah, I think this will affect the Carolina Panthers even more. Again, lack of depth. I think that they certainly need to address their secondary this offseason. And very unfortunate news about Peanut Tillman. I told you my all-time favorite Chicago Bear. Not only a great player, but a great person outside of football as well. He was actually playing with a torn ACL, a slightly tear in his ACL, and this past Sunday it completely tore. So as you tweeted yesterday, a warrior. And I think the Carolina Panthers are certainly going to miss both him and Ben Wickery.
Absolutely, especially if they have to play Seattle and Arizona to get to the Super Bowl. Even if it's on their home field, it's not going to be easy against those two pass offenses. And speaking of the Seahawks, let's talk about that. Because to start the season, I think I was like, oh my God, what happened to them? These aren't the Seahawks. And then all of a sudden, Russell Wilson makes one of the biggest improvements. Yeah, Cam Newton's made amazing improvements too, but so has Russell Wilson. Just like Cam Newton, Russell Wilson has finally learned how to play from the pocket, as you can see. Is Russell Wilson on fire or what? The last 7 games, 24 touchdown passes to 1 interception. Doug Baldwin, who in my opinion has been one of the best route runners in the National Football League, is playing as good as any receiver in football right now. And Tyler Lockett, who needs Jimmy Graham when you got a guy like Tyler Lockett who has Antonio Brown-esque characteristics, and he's even faster, yet his route running is just as enviable. And plus they got Marshawn Lynch back this week to go with Christian Michael, who is finally running like the running back the Seahawks expected when they drafted him. And Bryce Brown's not a slappy either. And the Seahawks defense is finally getting their swag back. Do you think that the Seattle Seahawks are one of the scariest number 6 seeds in modern memory right now? Would you say that? And do you think they are capable of running the table and defying history by making it to the Super Bowl for a 3rd consecutive season?
Yeah, I certainly do. I think they are one of the best 6 seeds in quite some time. They're probably one of the hottest 6 seeds in quite some time. Like you mentioned, I mean, Russell Wilson has been lights out, and it's pretty messed up. I mean, ever since Jimmy Graham was lost for the season, this team has somehow turned a corner and has been playing like one of the best teams in the NFL, playing up to their potential when they lose one of their best players. Go figure. But you know what? I think I tweeted yesterday that Doug Baldwin has been beyond impressive. This is a guy that I thought was always very cocky. He always thought he was too good, better than he actually was. And, over the last, 8-10 weeks, he has really been balling out. He has over 1,000 yards. I think he has like 14, 15 touchdowns on the season, something insane like that. He's really been Russell Wilson's number 1 target, no doubt about it. Obviously, the injuries at running back is a little concerning. Yeah, Marshawn Lynch is coming back. We got to see exactly how healthy he'll be, how effective he'll be, and what this offense will look like with Marshawn Lynch inserted in there, because he's missed quite some time now. Thomas Rawls was on fire. Unfortunately, he's out for the season with an ankle injury. But the defenses seem to turn it back on, and this looks like the Seattle Seahawks from last season compared to the first half of this season. A very scary team, and again, probably the hottest team in the NFL. I mean, if you want to go with them or the Kansas City Chiefs, both. I don't know. I would say stay far away from the Seattle Seahawks if possible. I mean, you got to wonder if the Minnesota Vikings did help themselves or not by winning this past Sunday to win the NFC North to now go up against the Seattle Seahawks this weekend.
They might be wondering the same thing. Exactly. And before we get into this weekend's matchups, let's move on to the 4th team. We talked about the Broncos. We talked about the Cardinals. We talked about the Panthers. The 4th team that has the week off this week, the New England Patriots. We were talking about the Patriots going 16-0 the last time we spoke on this show. And not only did they finish 12-4, after starting 10-0, they lost 4 of their last 6 games. And the stockpiling of injuries, even to a team that is as well coached as the Patriots, they take their toll too. And they've apparently taken their toll up right now. And yes, they get guys like Julian Edelman and Dante Hightower back after this week, and Sebastian Vollmer too. But I don't think even Sebastian Vollmer himself can be the cure for the Patriots offensive line woes. Tom Brady hit 17 times, having the tar beat out of him on Sunday against the Dolphins. And based on their offensive line woes alone, and there are other issues too, their lack of a running game without LeGarrette Blount and Steven Jackson, how much does he have left in the tank? God knows how much. But even though I personally have them as the favorites in the AFC right now, I am very worried about the New England Patriots right now. How do you think the concern should the Patriots be right now? And do you think they should still be regarded as the favorites in the AFC?
I do. And yeah, I mean, they had a fantastic start to the season, but like you mentioned, these last 6 weeks have been very, very hard on the Patriots. Obviously, injuries. They will this week, but I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I mean, a lot of people think Rob Gronkowski is the magic puzzle to Tom Brady and this Patriots offense. And you can make a solid argument for it, but I'm almost thinking it's Julian Edelman. I mean, this offense has not looked right since he's been out with an injury. I mean, not to mention the lack of wide receiver depth on the team anyway. But you know, I think Julian Edelman, there's no doubt that he's Brady's favorite target. Maybe not the most effective. I mean, you can make an argument for Rob Gronkowski there as well. Both great players, no doubt about it. But I think this team needs Julian Edelman to make it to the promised land, to make another appearance in the Super Bowl and possibly win it. And now he will. It sounds like he will be back for the playoffs, but I'm not exactly sure how effective. I think it was there was somebody on ESPN who mentioned it as well. Chris Carter, he was talking about, and I'm not the biggest fan of Chris Carter's analysis, and I know many people out there aren't either, but he is a former wide receiver. He is a former wide receiver great, so you gotta at least take in some of what he says into account. And he says that he doesn't expect Julian Edelman to look like the same Julian Edelman that we're used to. I mean, especially coming off of a foot injury for a wide receiver, it's going to take quite a few weeks for him to get back into the groove of things. So that'll be interesting to watch out for. I do think the Patriots are still probably the favorite in the AFC. I mean, I think there's no doubt that they have the best quarterback in the AFC in Tom Brady, and that right there probably says it all. But that offensive line is going to have to improve if that offensive line, that offense as a whole is going to have to improve for this Patriots team to go anywhere.
I agree. Even though I would still consider the Patriots the favorites, like we're on the same page here, there's still a lot to be concerned about, and it wouldn't be shocking to see a team like Pittsburgh beat them, or maybe even Kansas City or even Denver, because they always have a hard time playing in Denver for some odd reason, even with Tom Brady. So that's the way to watch. And also about Edelman, his injury was a Jones fracture, which was the same injury that Dez Bryant suffered earlier this year. And Dez obviously didn't look right for the rest of the season after he came back. And Kevin Durant had the same injury last year, and he didn't look right either all of last year. So so Chris Carter's absolutely right. Edelman might not be full strength at all for the remainder of this season. So that is a very alarming scenario for the Patriots to consider above all else. And now let's move on to the reason why we're talking here. In NFL playoffs start this weekend. We got 4 wildcard playoff games starting at 3:30 in the afternoon, Chicago Central Time, 4:30 Eastern, with the Chiefs going to NRG Stadium in Houston to play the AFC South champion Houston Texans. And both these teams met in week 1 with the Chiefs prevailing 27-20, although that game was over long before the gun sounded. So first of all, what do you think the Texans need to do differently on Saturday to pull out a victory this time against the Chiefs compared to when they last met in week 1?
Yeah, well, obviously both teams are completely different. I mean, like you mentioned, that was the first week of the regular season. So, I mean, both teams kind of have an identity now. Both teams might know what to expect now, seeing as we're now going to be in the playoffs, in the wild card round of the playoffs. I would just have to say, and I don't have the stats. I'm not exactly sure what exactly went on in that game, except for the final score, 27-20. The Chiefs prevailed. I would just have to say that I would assume the Houston Texans are gonna they're gonna put more bodies in the box. They're gonna try to stop in the run, and they're pretty much just gonna say, hey, if you guys want to beat us, if you think you can beat us, then we're gonna make Alex Smith beat us, because I still don't know if Alex Smith has the respect in the league that he deserves. I mean, I know he's, like you mentioned, he's not a flashy quarterback. He's not going to put up any big, great numbers, but he knows how to not turn over the ball, and that right there is crucial. It'll be interesting to see. I do see the Chiefs winning this game. I just think overall they're the better team, and hey, the Texans have Brandon Weeden starting under center. I believe he's going to be the starting quarterback. But I wouldn't put my money on the Houston Texans this weekend.
Neither would I. And for the record, Brian Hoyer is back. But whoever is quarterback, losing Dwayne Brown, their stud left tackle for the season, to a fully torn quad injury, kills them against this Kansas City Panthers, with Justin Houston coming back from injury and Tamahali and whatever packages they could send at you. But I agree. I see the Chiefs winning, but in order for Houston to win, they're need their defense to make some big plays and force some turnovers, and there is some hope for that happening. Given since the dawn of November, the Texans' defense is number 1 in yards allowed per game, number 1 in first down rate, yards per play, and points, and number 1 in fewest points allowed since November 1st. So do you think at least the Texans defense can make this game a little bit more respectable than the last one?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think even if the Chiefs walk away with a 7-point win, that right there, I think I could expect that as well. Yeah, they're playing like the best defense. I mean, the numbers certainly back that up. The Texans are, but I don't know if it's going to be a gritty, 13-7 game. I could see it being a 20-27 game. But yeah, I certainly agree with you that the Houston Texans are going to certainly have to make plays and not rely on their offense in this game.
That is true. However, I want to talk about some of the matchups that could decide this game, and if you have any others aside from this one, speak up. But a matchup that comes to my mind is DeAndre Hopkins, who, in my opinion, made his case as a top 5 receiver in the National Football League this year. His route running is just amazing. Like, no matter who plays quarterback, he always finds ways to get himself in the best position to catch the football. And even he can make the toughest catches look routine. He's a beast against Marcus Peters, who you alluded to earlier, and who, in my opinion, should be hands down the defensive rookie of the year, especially playing that position where it's rather easy to struggle for a rookie. And to come away with 8 interceptions and to hold his own against some of the league's top receivers is interesting. But I am thinking that matchup will go a long way in deciding who wins this game, because if DeAndre Hopkins can get free and make 3 or 4 explosive plays, that could be all the doctor ordered for Houston, especially if their defense plays lights out. What thoughts on that matchup and any others that come to mind?
Yeah. I mean, Marcus Peters certainly has a big test this weekend to cover. Certainly one of the top wide receivers in DeAndre Hopkins, and just want to publicly say thank you, DeAndre Hopkins, for all the help on my fantasy football team. It was greatly appreciated. You were awesome. But anyways, yeah, I mean, that is probably the number 1 matchup to look out for. And of course, this isn't necessarily a matchup, but really excited to see. I can't believe his name is the safety on the Chiefs.
Eric Berry or Ron Parker?
There you go, Eric Berry. I don't know how I forgot his name. Really excited to see Eric Berry back in the postseason play.
How can I forget him either?
Yeah, certainly the comeback player of the year, and has been playing awesome, and has certainly deserved that Pro Bowl vote that he'll be playing in. if the Chiefs don't make it to the Super Bowl, who knows? But yeah, not necessarily a matchup right there. I think Marcus Peters versus DeAndre Hopkins is certainly the number one thing to look out for in this game. But definitely happy to see Eric Berry back on the field, and it'll be interesting to see how this Houston Texans offensive line holds up against the Chiefs pass rush with now Justin Houston being back.
Yes, and I'm also looking to see a lot of blitzing from that defense now, because especially with a quarterback like Brian Hoyer, whoever's played quarterback for the Texans, you should be fearless in blitzing whoever they have back there. And how I was foolish to not mention Eric Berry. Like I mentioned, there was like something about the spiritual, psychological effect of Peyton Manning coming back into that game for Denver on Sunday. I think the Chiefs are kind of playing in a similar way because of Eric Berry, a guy who at this time last year was having poisons injected into his body on like at once every 3-week basis. I can assume. I went through chemotherapy myself, so I understand exactly what he went through. All the poison and toxins running through your body. I had no idea he would be able to make it back this year and play the way he is right now. Yep. And do you think that they're like having like that extra motivation, like we got to win this one for Eric Berry because we want to win the Super Bowl and they'll be the greatest comeback story in the history of sports? You kind of think that way?
I would hope so. I mean, whether they're thinking that way or not, I know for a fact they were thinking that way last season when Berry first went out. But whether that's carrying on to this season, I'm not exactly sure. But I certainly do think that, having Eric Berry back, obviously it's better for the team. But I think that it also makes his teammates more excited to see him back out there, see him making plays. And who would have thought that he would have been back to his own Pro Bowl self this season so quickly? I don't know if anybody really expected this type of return for Eric Berry, but nonetheless, just to see him back on the field, just to see him back strapping up for the Chiefs is great to see. And I'm sure it does, kind of like we were talking about with Peyton Manning, I'm sure it does kind of boost their confidence. And now Eric Berry and the Chiefs are back in the playoffs.
Absolutely, and it would be, like, in my opinion, one of the most remarkable stories in all sports if the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl and Eric Berry makes one of the key plays to win the game.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
That would be epic, man. That would be epic. But Alex Smith is going to have to do a lot more than he's traditionally done, in my opinion, to get him there. But I think they should beat the Texans. And after that game, I think you go to a game that some people want to write off early because the Bengals are probably not going to have Andy Dalton under center. They're still going to have A.J. McCarron. But like I said, given the Steelers' concerns in the secondary, and I thought A.J. McCarron has looked pretty good in these past 3 starts. I thought he looked phenomenal in moments against the Broncos in that Monday Night Football game, especially when they fell down 17-14. He led them on a drive to tie the game in which he had to convert a 3rd down at 16. With the pressure in his face, he just stood tall in the pocket and flung it over the middle and found Marvin Jones to convert that 1st down. I think A.J. McCarron is a competent enough quarterback for the Bengals to win this game because I tweeted this out a couple weeks ago. Regardless of who starts under center for the Bengals in the playoffs, it would be a massive failure if this version of their team doesn't win a playoff game because they're right now they're healthier than they've ever been in the past 4 years, and it is way too much talent to waste. Do you think they're still capable of beating Pittsburgh with A.J. McCarron?
Yes, I do. And you said it. I mean, the Steelers' defense are no longer one of the best defenses in the NFL like they have been once before for quite some time. And although, Andy Dalton, it was the best year of his career, he did do some great things this season and really impressed me. And of course, losing your starting quarterback for any team is going to be a downgrade. No matter how good the backup is, you could probably have the best backup in the NFL. You don't expect to get the same amount of play that you do from your starter. With that said, yeah, A.J. McCarron has played well. I don't think that I do think that they could certainly defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've played well under A.J. McCarron, and they certainly seem to have the confidence in A.J. McCarron, not only the coaching staff, but surrounding players as well. That A.J. to A.J. duo, that A.J. to A.J. connection, McCarron to Green has been quite deadly and has been quite some fun to watch. But I think the key thing is just don't turn over the football. He should have some success not doing that against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And let's see if we can get this running game going, man. Let's see if we can get Jeremy Hill. Let's see some Giovanni Bernard out there, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals match up well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if I had to make a prediction, yes, the Steelers are a team that many may not want to see, but I don't know if that necessarily goes for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals match up very well with them, even with A.J. McCarron under center. And I hate to keep on saying I'm rooting for this guy, I'm rooting for that guy, but I'm really rooting for Marvin Lewis to get that first playoff victory in Cincinnati. I think that he deserves it. I think he's a good coach, and would hate, and it would be a big disappointment if this team didn't go further into the postseason.
I completely agree that it would definitely be disappointing. I expect the Bengals to give the Steelers all they could handle this Saturday. And you mentioned the running game, and that is one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, because I was a Jeremy Hill fantasy owner these past 2 years, and for some reason this year the sophomore slump took over him like crazy. But I actually thought he's run as hard as he's ever run their final 2 games against Denver. Yes, he only turned out 46 yards, but he ran very well, I thought, in the first half. And he obviously had a very good game. Yes, it was against the depleted Ravens defense, but that hopefully he'll get his confidence up. But the Steelers, as bad as they are against the pass, they are fairly good against the run, to my knowledge. So that running game is definitely going to be a big key for the Bengals to win on Saturday and not trade the ball over. But what do you think is another big key, or in general, what are the other main things you're looking for in this game?
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how at least for right now, from what I'm hearing, it's not sounding too great on DeAngelo Williams. I mean, if he does go out and play, I think he'll certainly be limited. So I'll be interested to seeing how that affects the Steelers' offense as a whole. I would expect that it would make their play calling more predictable, and how that would affect the Steelers' offense as a whole. Will the Bengals' defense be able to pick up some calls, be able to pick up some of the play calls, that is, and will they be able to shut down Antonio Brown, the hottest wide receiver in the NFL? That is a big test for this defense.
It most certainly is, and I think come to think of it, the matchup that will decide this game, in my opinion, is Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, and Marcus Wheaton. Those 3 triplets are going to be the best wide receiver core of the National Football League, in my opinion. Well, them in Arizona, but the tie goes to the team with Antonio Brown. No offense to the Cardinals, but
hey, Larry Fitzgerald has rejuvenated himself this season.
He sure has. Like I said, those are the 2 best receiving cores in football, and I said the Steelers are just slightly above them in my eyes. Slightly. But both of them have embarrassment of riches at the position, to be sure. And and going against the Bengals secondary, which actually had an all-pro caliber season from Pac-Man Jones, out of all people. And I believe they're hoping they could get George Iloka, their strong safety back, to go with Reggie Nelson. That's one of the better safety combos in the National Football League. And they were able to hold the Steelers' offense to 10 points earlier in the year in Heinz Field, out of all places. So there is hope for this Bengals secondary to match up well with these Steelers receivers to a certain extent, or at least minimize what they can do. Don't you think so?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. That's where the running game would come in, and who knows how effective that'll be, even with banged up DeAngelo Williams. One of the better, probably the best backup running back in the league. I mean, he has stepped in and filled that spot of Le'Veon Bell.
Rescued them.
Yeah. I mean, it's been very impressive. And I honestly wasn't sure if DeAngelo Williams had anything left. I mean, he's been hurt the last few years in Carolina. Here he is in Pittsburgh in a backup role now. And, now obviously having to take over as the starter, he's really impressed. Very, very impressive, and a great pickup for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that's where it's going to come down to is, the running game. How much success are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to have in the running game? Who will be back in the backfield behind Ben Roethlisberger? And let's see if the Cincinnati Bengals secondary is able to make those plays and kind of make the Steelers offense struggle quite a bit, as we both know that the Cincinnati Bengals defense is capable of doing it. We'll see if that certainly happens. Let's see if Vontaze Burfict, who I can't knock him. I mean, the guy is a very good linebacker. Certainly knows how to make plays, but let's see if he makes any boneheaded mistakes this weekend that could possibly cost the Cincinnati Bengals this game, because I certainly wouldn't put it past him.
He definitely cost him that Denver game. I'll tell you that in overtime, if you concur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, but I believe the straw that stirs the drink on that defense is big number 97 Geno Atkins, who has had another. He has a case for comeback player of the year. Yes, we're going to give it to Eric Berry, but Geno Atkins can't be ignored either. Coming off a down year where he clearly wasn't recovered from ACL surgery, he has balled out amazingly this year. And in order for that, the best way, in my opinion, to contain Ben Roethlisberger in that pass game is Geno Atkins going up the gut and in his face. That makes any great quarterback look mortal. And Geno Atkins is going to have the game of his life, in my opinion, for the Bengals.
Got to give credit to Carlos Dunlap as well. I believe he leads the Bengals in sacks.
Oh, absolutely. Carlos Dunlap. Yeah, it's like a tandem. Geno gets enough penetration up front, and he demands extra attention, and that leaves Carlos Dunlap one-on-one, and he's done an amazing job winning those one-on-one matchups. But I don't mean to take anything away from Carlos Dunlap, but it is grossly easy nowadays with a horrendous right tackle play across the National Football League. Just terrible. So, but still kudos to Carlos Dunlap. So those two guys could be the key to a Bengals victory, as we know, but a lot, as we know, can determine that one way or the other. And now we only have like 12 minutes or so left. So let's discuss Sunday's playoff slate, which is the NFC wildcard games. And we start in frigid Minnesota, where it's a high of 7 and a low of 7 below, where the Seattle Seahawks the Red Hot Seahawks, as we allude to, go back to take on a team that both you and I were bullish on in July, the Minnesota Vikings, the NFC North champion Minnesota Vikings. And a lot of people are, as you said, wondering, did the Vikings make the right choice in winning that game? Because they have to play the Red Hot Seahawks, and they played them on their home field this year and got absolutely slaughtered by a score I believe was like 35-38-7, and the only big play for the Vikings was a 100+ yard kickoff return touchdown by Cordero Patterson in garbage time. So, but I think the Vikings have the potential to make it a very close game this time around. And do you think they do? And if so, what do they need to do to keep it close, aside from Adrian Peterson having a productive game?
Yeah, I think, starting right there with the offense, I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to make more plays. Probably my favorite young quarterback in the league. But he's going to have to make more plays and make the play calling less predictable for the Minnesota Vikings. Let's not just hand it off. Let's not just throw it 5-10 yards down the field. He's gonna have to make a lot of plays in this game, and it's gonna be tough against the Seattle Seahawks. But I think the Minnesota Vikings do match up well with the Seattle Seahawks. Like you mentioned, they've met once before. The Minnesota Vikings want some payback, and they want to do that by sending the Seattle Seahawks home for the rest of the season. And I think one of the things that Minnesota is going to have to do, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but it's going to be on defense. As we know, Russell Wilson is probably he's playing as good as football as you could in the National Football League, and it's going to be tough to obviously force any turnovers or force any mistakes by Russell Wilson. But I think the Minnesota Vikings defensive line could certainly do that against the Seahawks offensive line, a horrible offensive line. I think the pass rush with Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph has played great this year for the Vikings. He's been a big piece to that defensive line, and even Brian Robinson. I think all these guys, and you got some young rookies like Danielle Hunter, who has made some plays over the last month and a half. He's had a nice impact on this team as well. And then you got some great linebackers. I mean, one of the best young linebacking duos in the league, and Anthony Barr, who is an all-around great linebacker, could make plays in the backfield, could cover your tight end as well. And of course, his teammate from college, and now reunited there in Minnesota in
Eric Kendricks.
There you go, Eric Kendricks, brother of Michael Kendricks. Yeah, so I think that this is a good matchup. I know that the Vikings have gotten blown out already by the Seahawks this season, but I'm going to say that this time around at Minnesota, yeah, obviously, I'm sure they would rather play the Washington Redskins, even if it had to be on the road. But I think winning the NFC North is a big statement. I think that they wouldn't change anything if they could have. And I think that this time around they're gonna play a much better football game. And whether or not they get the win, I'm not exactly sure about that. But nonetheless, it should be a very close and very competitive football game.
Yes, and you said it. Kind of like the Texans defense are going to have to make plays to win against the Chiefs. The Vikings defense is going to have to force Russell Wilson into a turnover, or maybe at least 2 turnovers to win that game. And the guys to make that happen are, you said, Emerson Griffin, Linval Joseph, and their array of pass rushers they have. And their defense is going to need to ball out like crazy, in my opinion, for them to pull off the upset. I see them playing as good a game as possible, but I still, by the end of the day, see Seattle prevailing, albeit by a close margin. And we'll get to the rest of our predictions later, but for now we got to move on to the second game of the NFC slate. And it's the Washington. I'm not going to say it might be a presidential election season, and this is not tipping my politics one way or the other, but I am not going to say their team name on the show, my opinion, because I personally believe the name should be changed to reflect the changing demographics of this country. But that's for another debate. So Green Bay, the Packers going to place Washington, and oh my goodness. We were talking about Aaron Rodgers, those first 4 weeks, and saying, oh, he is getting by without Jordy Nelson. If he wins a Super Bowl this year, he's going to be the best. He could be the best quarterback who ever played the game. But ever since they played the Denver Broncos show the rest of the league, this is how you exploit Jordy Nelson's absence, and the rest of the league ran away with it, and the Packers have nothing to answer for it. Receivers not gaining separation. Running game regressing. Offensive line regressing. Aaron Rodgers is a poor, helpless lamb lost in the woods right now. That's all I could say. I feel so bad for that guy. And it's surprising, even though I think at full strength the Packers are definitely a better team than Washington. I definitely see Washington winning this game, especially with the way Kirk Cousins has played this year. 29 touchdowns compared to 13 interceptions for a quarterback known for that, for being that erratic. Even more erratic than that, I should say, is remarkable. And because the Packers, unless they find offense in this game, I just don't see them winning. Do you?
No, I don't. No, I don't. They have to find offense, but I do think that I just can't see Washington. I can't see Washington defeating Green Bay. I just can't do it. I mean, I know they're playing at Washington. I just think that I don't know. I mean, I before the season started, I had Washington being the worst team in the NFL, believe it or not. And sure, they've played in the NFC East, and it's not a good division at all, but you got to give them credit, especially this last half of the season, especially the last half of the season by Kirk Cousins. I believe I heard on Mike and Mike just the other day that the last half of the season, believe it or not, Kirk Cousins has had the best quarterback rating in all of the NFL, and I just couldn't believe it. But yeah, he's been beyond impressive. I mean, Jordan Reed, you can make an argument that he's a top 3 at least, top 5 tight end in the game. He's been a very nice. When healthy, he's already proven that he could be a very good tight end. But you know what? I'm going to say Green Bay wins it. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's not necessarily going to turn things around. He's not going to have a dominant performance, but it's really just based off, my prediction from this offseason and to thinking that Washington was the worst team in the NFL. And no, they're not the worst team in the NFL. But I just think that And both you and I were high, like many people were, on Green Bay heading into this season. Obviously, losing Jordy Nelson is a huge loss to that team. But in the end, I got to think Aaron Rodgers is able to dominate this Washington Redskins defense, which has gotten better over the last couple of years. It's really gotten better this season. I got to think Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay somehow, some way, pulls out a close victory.
That is a fair prediction, but in order for that to happen, his receivers are going to have to separate better, and the Washington secondary might provide an answer, but it's still very hard, regardless of what happens in this game. It's hard to see the Packers or Washington, for that matter, making a deep playoff run. Wouldn't you say so?
I would agree 100% on that. I would certainly agree.
Yeah, so that could be one of that is probably one of the most least enticing matchups of the week. No offense, but hopefully they'll both teams will give us a great showing. And we are almost out of time here, Chris. But before we go, let's run down our picks for this week and who we think will eventually wind up in the Super Bowl. So Chris, we both like Kansas City this week over Houston. I like Kansas City, as do you. That right?
Yep.
Yes, and Saturday night, you say you like the Bengals. Is that correct? You like the Bengals?
Yep, I like Cincinnati in that one.
I'm just going with Pittsburgh because of Roethlisberger's experience factor, but nonetheless, it wouldn't shock me if the Bengals found some way to pull it out. And A.J. McCarron, folks, don't forget, he played in a pro-level offense at the University of Alabama, won multiple national championships. This guy knows pressure situations, so don't count him out. It's going to be a very close game, but I think Pittsburgh, being the more experienced, having the better quarterback option, finds a way to make the Bengals one and done yet again, but it'll be very close. I like Seattle, like I alluded to, over Minnesota on Sunday, but this time it'll come much harder, and they'll only win by one score or two scores tops, if not just one score. You like Seattle in that game as well?
Yeah, I also like Seattle in a close one. It should be a good game. Should be a great game. Probably the game to watch this weekend, either that or Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. But yeah, I like Seattle by 3-4 points.
Yep, and that's what all Vikings fans should be hoping for their team to give the Seahawks all they could have after that thrashing they suffered earlier this year at TCF Bank Stadium. And you say you like the Packers to grind out a victory against Washington. I'm actually going with Washington because I just do not trust those Packers receivers against any defense to gain separation. And if you saw one of my tweets last night, I think my cat and your cat could better separate from those defenders, and Rodgers would have a much easier time throwing to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, all I got.
I would like to see some guys make some more of the opportunity. There's no doubt about it. It's hard to replace a Jordy Nelson, and I'm not really asking for that. But guys like a Jared Abbrederis or even a guy like Randall Cobb, I really would like to see more out of him. James Jones, earlier in the season, he was awesome, but really fell off the second half, as did all the Packers receivers. So I really would like to see, and it's hard to say that as a guy from Chicago, being a lifelong Bears fan, but really would like to see some guys rise up to the occasion. Jeff Janis, Jared Abbrederis, guys like that.
Absolutely. I think they should. It's puzzling why they don't use Jeff Janis more on offense and take advantage of his quickness and get him in space and have him create, because that's what the Packers need. The play call. Yeah, you could blame the loss of Jordy. You could blame Rodgers all you want, or the offensive line, whatever. But the play calling has been atrocious. They're not finding ways to scheme these guys open, and it's a disgrace. And before we go, let's make our initial Super Bowl predictions. I'm sure we were both entering a Super Bowl pool or playoff pool in one way or the other. Who are the two teams in the Super Bowl and who wins?
All right, so I have the Carolina Panthers meeting the Arizona Cardinals in the NFC Championship game. I got the Arizona Cardinals squeaking a victory out over there, and as far as the AFC side of the ball, I got New England still representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Who they meet in the AFC Championship game, I have no idea. So I do have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the New England Patriots. Patriots obviously looking to win 2 straight Super Bowls.
Yes. Who do you think wins in that matchup?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals, man. I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals. They've been a really nice, feel-good story. I mean, it's hard not to root for Bruce Arians and what they've been able to do this season. I mean, Carson Palmer. If it wasn't for the season that Cam Newton has had, I would probably say he would be the MVP of the season. We've seen how much he's meant to this team, not only this season with him in, but last season with him inactive as well. So. I will have the Arizona Cardinals defeating the New England Patriots in a Super Bowl to remember for the ages. Maybe not as much as last year's Super Bowl. Obviously, going down to the very last play, but it should be a good one if these two teams meet up there in Super Bowl 50.
Yes, that would be an enticing Super Bowl matchup. I, on the other hand, have the Carolina Panthers. I think there's something about that mental toughness about them, and Ron Rivera being on that 85 Bears team, bringing that winning perspective to that team, and the season that Cam Newton has. I think they're just too tough at home, especially. And I see them finding some way to get by, whether it's by Seattle, Arizona, or both of them. I think they find a way to do it, and they'll meet against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And I actually believe the Patriots find some way, like they've done many times before, to battle through this adversity and win their 5th Super Bowl, officially cementing Tom Brady's status as the best quarterback to ever play in the National Football League. And that does it for today for Sports Crunch with DKROM. Chris Shanafelt and I both have our commitments to get to right now. But join us next week as we break down the divisional playoff round of the NFL playoffs. But for now, I'm David Cromwell, and for Chris Shanafelt, and we are saying so long. We will see you next week, and enjoy Wildcard Playoff Weekend. Good day, everybody.